Hey minions, welcome to Crank It Up. I'm Jim Price, and on this episode of King of the Hill, the 50th episode, I wanted to do something a bit different. I put out a vote on Crank It Up's Facebook page for which faction to feature, and it ended in a three-way tie, which isn't helpful. After 50 weeks, I wanted to talk about someone different, someone I don't always get to cover, and when I started to think about who that was, I realized that there was a faction I rarely cover because they aren't a faction: monsters. The monsters have two king monsters who can really disrupt the game in different ways, and I figured it was a good opportunity to change things up. Instead of thinking about what to do with your minions, what do we do about these minions? How do you use neutral minions to your own advantage? The two monsters in question are the Plutonium Dragon and the Knight of the Living Dead. The monster deck has two types, regular and undead, with the two minions representing those classes respectively. Right now, there is only one way to manipulate the monster deck, and that is with Moon03, who can look at the top card of any deck. Given how disruptive these minions can be, it may actually be worth it, because if you see one of these monsters, it's hard not to feel their presence. So I'll be looking at both of them individually to see what we can do to use them to our advantage, beyond just destroying them for treasures. Hindrances can be an opportunity after all. Let's start with the Plutonium Dragon, who destroys all minions of power 2 or less on its base at the end of every turn. This includes monsters, vaporizing their treasures since they are destroyed by a neutral player. When this monster comes out, low-powered swarm factions will have a tough time and likely avoid that base. But you could also avoid the Plutonium Dragon with your higher-powered minions, which is why it's important to manipulate this as much as possible. If you can move other players' minions, you can send those minions into the Plutonium Dragon's base to be destroyed. Because of the 5 power it adds to the breakpoint, it will likely make the base harder to break, without the help of many minions, allowing the base to survive past Phase 3 and get to Phase 5 when the destruction occurs. Renewable movement is really your friend here, as the Plutonium Dragon becomes your personal powered-up Cub Scout. If someone does manage to place a minion there, you could use Mr. Grumpers to lower its power safely from a distance. Mr. Grumpers can affect a minion on a base after all. Grumpiness and equivalent actions can make it easier for minions to be destroyed and provide less incentive to play there. My personal favorite is to use Glimmer to depower a minion severely, as most minions will fall into Plutonium Dragon's range. But what's the only thing better than one dragon? Multiple dragons, of course. With Dragonlands, hatchlings can survive the Plutonium Dragon's wrath, and the timing of Phase 5 actually works out in your favor. With a few hatchlings on the base, you may be able to turn the Plutonium Dragon into your personal leprechaun. This is something many players get wrong, the order of events in Phase 5. The current player can only choose the order to an extent, and this only applies to actions that trigger at the end of the turn, not expire. All trigger events happen in the order chosen by the current player, and after they are complete, then all abilities that expire at the end of the turn expire simultaneously. So this allows the Plutonium Dragon to always occur before hatchling expires, allowing you to trick your opponents into thinking that the minion is safe, when it is not. If you can wall yourself off a base, while making the other bases undesirable by normal dragon means, your opponents will be driven crazy. Failing all else, you can move the Plutonium Dragon into a base with many small minions to destroy them all at the same time. This works well after you have walled off a base for yourself and you want to continue the great work of the Plutonium Dragon. With the dragon, the game plan is either to avoid entirely or feed your opponents to the dragon, and I prefer to choose the latter. Granted, this isn't exactly something you can really control, but if you have a faction that can seize upon this opportunity, it has a chance to be a game changer. The Knight of the Living Dead is the monster Starlight, capable of going to crazy power levels. Unlike Plutonium Dragon, the Knight of the Living Dead is somewhat in your control. By spamming monsters on a base, you will eventually bring it out, and it will have enough power to make a base extremely undesirable. To do this, you either need to play warriors or mages, both of which can eventually exploit this minion in the endgame. Because monsters add to the breakpoint, delaying a base works because you are increasing the breakpoint by at least 4 per turn. This is because the lowest minions are Poultrygeist, who will get +1 because the knight is undead, who also gets +1 from Poultrygeist, and because the Web Troll plays another monster and creates 2 power itself. The Shield of Ubiquity can add power to mitigate most of the monster's power, but Night of the Living Dead will still put the base out of reach. Then, when the moment is right, you can use Warcry to steal his power or control minion and greatly swing the breakpoint on a base that your opponents have largely given up on. I enjoy doing this with Critter Champion to spam taunters. You can also skip the Shield of Ubiquity and just play Ruckus to destroy all the monsters, powering up a star player and using Tadpor to move anyone else left behind off the previous purgatory of a base. The Turner also excels at destroying the Knight because it is undead, so beware of this as a counter or consider it an opportunity to get 2 easy treasures while you attempt to make it a delay tactic. Seeing the impact that these monsters have, it makes me realize that there is still design space to be explored with monsters. You have 2 monsters who can be quite disruptive without a means to get to them. The dwarves use the discard pile to manipulate the treasure deck, so if we ever revisit monsters, I'd like to see a faction centered around manipulating the monster deck. Whether it's reordering or searching for a specific monster, there are ways to make it work. And this is coming from someone who's not even the biggest fan of monsters. I just hate leaving design space on the floor. To me, it's the equivalent of just always playing random factions. Don't leave your experience up to random chance. I tend to find the other monsters annoying, but these are intriguing enough to make me think twice about the mechanic. What do you think of these monsters? If you have encountered them, did you find them to be particularly disruptive? And if so, were you able to exploit that? Or were they forgettable? Let me know in the comments. That's it for this week. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Let's shut it down.